was a time when families gathered around the warm hum of the radio for thrills and chills. Voices in the dark telling stories that pried open the imagination and let something unspoken slip in. Tonight, we return to that sacred space between static and silence. These are tales of vanishing rooms, impossible photographs, haunted houses, and strange frequencies. So settle in, let the world outside fade, and let your mind paint the pictures. Because what you're about to hear isn't just entertainment. It's an invitation to explore the boundaries of where fact meets fear. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is the Paranormal 360.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney. You won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Meet Claire Donnelly. Practical, grounded, a pragmatic woman of numbers and logic, not flights of fancy. She doesn't believe in fate. She doesn't trust dreams. But tonight, something or someone is about to shake that belief to its core. And when sleep arrives, so too does a warning from a place that lies just beyond the veil of reason, a place like the Paranormal 360. It began as strange things often do, in the quietest part of the night. Claire Donnelly had never been superstitious. She didn't read horoscopes. She didn't believe in fate. She believed in data, deadlines, and sleeping with a white noise machine set to ocean breeze. But on a cold Tuesday night in March, a dream visited her that felt less like the brain cleaning house and more like a transmission. There was a man at the foot of her bed, not a hazy figure fading in and out like most dreams. No, this one had weight, a presence. He was tall, dressed in a dark overcoat, and though his face remained obscured under the low brim of a weather-beaten hat, his posture was rigid, like a soldier frozen in a moment of warning. His voice cut through the air, low, firm, and eerily grounded in her reality. "Don't take the bridge." And then he was gone. She sat upright, drenched in sweat. It was 3:04 a.m. The numbers glared at her like an accusation. She lay there, heart hammering, listening for the sound of a voice that no longer filled the room. But she could still feel the rumble through her ears like distant thunder. The next night, he returned. This time closer, at her bedside. His coat still buttoned high, his gloved hands by his sides. The air around him felt heavier, and Claire, caught between waking and sleep, could smell something sharp, old, a mix of tobacco, burnt paper, and dust. His mouth began to move. "They won't see it coming." The words rolled through her, not heard, but felt like bass through a floorboard. She woke with a strangled breath, gasping as if surfacing from underwater. Sleep paralysis, she told herself. Nothing more, nothing less. Claire's trip to her sister's house was scheduled for that weekend, a 4-hour drive through a patchwork of sleepy towns and farm roads. The fastest way? County Road 63. Right over the narrow old bridge just past Miller's Bluff. She stood in her kitchen Friday morning, coffee gone cold in her hand, staring at her suitcase. Her phone buzzed, a message from her sister. "Can't wait to see you. Drive safe." She dialed instead of texting back. "Hey," Claire said, trying to keep her voice light. "Think I'm going to come next weekend instead. Something came up." Her sister was disappointed, but she didn't press. Claire didn't offer a reason either. 2 days later, Highway 63 made the news. Fog had rolled in heavy. Semi lost control on the bridge, jackknifing across the road. 5 vehicles caught in the chaos, 2 fatalities. An emergency crew struggled to reach the scene. Claire stared at the images on her screen. One of the cars, mangled, burnt beyond recognition, looked just like hers. Same year, same model, even the same color. She didn't move, didn't speak. She didn't breathe for what felt like hours. She also didn't tell anyone, not even Amanda. The man hadn't appeared again, but the feeling lingered. That sense of being observed, of something waiting just outside of view. Then, one night, she saw him again. Not in a dream, but in the mirror. Claire was brushing her teeth when a flicker caught her eye. He wiped the fog from the glass and saw him, not behind her, but in the reflection, in that gray realm between the mirror's surface. "Don't answer the door," he said. The words stopped her cold. She stared into the glass, willing herself not to look behind. The reflection was empty. The bathroom was still, but the warning echoed. At 2:46 a.m., someone knocked. 3 knocks. Slow, measured. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Then came another 3 knocks. She waited, unmoving, breath caught in her chest, until dawn. When the sun rose, she found a single muddy footprint on the welcome mat. One bare footprint facing the door. She called the police. They found no sign of forced entry, no one on camera, no disturbance. Probably just a prank, one officer said. But Claire noticed something else. Her doorbell camera had cut off at 2:44 a.m. and didn't come back on until 3:05 a.m. She didn't sleep the next night either. The day after, a package appeared on her doorstep. There was no postage, no name, no return address. Inside, an antique mirror, heavy, circular, the surface cloudy with age. A piece of masking tape clung to the back with one message in faint typewriter font. "We're not done." That night, he came again. In the mirror. No words allowed this time, only the voice inside her skull, low and tired. "There will be others. I can't protect you from them all." Claire whispered, "Who are you?" He said nothing, but his expression softened. She saw his eyes this time, vast and black, not empty, but burdened. Then, like before, he vanished, like smoke pulled through a crack in reality. Claire moved, got rid of the mirror, took down every reflective surface in her new apartment. She blocked Highway 63 from her phone's GPS, and she kept her doors double locked, her lights on at night, and her dreams closely guarded. But every so often, in those final moments before sleep overtakes her, Claire swears that she can almost hear the voice as it calls out to her, "Don't forget me." And she never will, because she knows now there are things in this world that whisper warnings we don't always want to hear. Some come in dreams, some come through reflections in time, and some come from a place not bound by time at all, a place just beyond reason, a place like the Paranormal 360. Our next tale brings us to a quiet tree-lined street in a mid-century neighborhood, where one couple seeking a fresh start finds a house filled not just with memories, but murmurs, sounds that travel through old vents like echoes from lives once lived, lives that never truly left. Tonight, you've turned into a radio signal that may be listening back, but that's to be expected when you tune in to the Paranormal 360. Ava and Thomas Burke weren't looking for perfection, just peace. They had spent 3 years packed into a noisy, overpriced apartment in the city. Paper-thin walls, screaming neighbors, sirens at all hours. They were ready for quiet, for calm, for somewhere they could finally exhale. And that's what the house on Pelham Lane promised. A single-story brick ranch, wide front porch, twin maple trees casting lazy shadows across the yard. Built in 1957, just one previous owner. The place even had a fireplace and an old rotary doorbell that gave a satisfying ding when you turned it. Good bones, the realtor said. Original ductwork, too. Oversized return in the hallway, but that's just meaning better circulation. Neither of them thought to ask why a modest ranch house would need such an industrial-sized vent system. They just signed the papers, and they were owners within the week. The first night felt like a dream. They drank wine from plastic cups, sat on the floor, and laughed at how empty the house sounded. The silence was beautiful. No neighbors, no shouting, no alarms, no gunshots, just the occasional creak of old wood settling into the night. They fell asleep in each other's arms, exhausted but grateful. At 2:12 a.m., Ava awoke. Not from a nightmare, not from a sound exactly, but more from a feeling. She sat up in bed and listened. Somewhere in the hallway, someone was talking. Low murmurs at first. There was a rhythm and a cadence. Not shouting, not exactly whispering, but it was a conversation, as if a radio had been left on or people were standing just out of view. She slid out of bed, feet soft on the wood floor. The hallway was dimly lit by the moonlight spilling through a window. And there, on the floor, sat the massive air vent, easily 2 feet across. She crouched beside it. The metal grill was cool beneath her palm. Inside, from deep in the ducts, came the soft sound of humming. A woman's voice. And just beneath that, a reply. A man, calm but muted. She leaned closer, and the voices stopped. The next morning, she told Thomas. He smiled sleepily and unbothered. It's an old house, honey. Ducks can carry sound weird. It could have just been a TV from the next door neighbors. Honey, the nearest house is 100 yards away, she replied. Well, maybe squirrel with just good taste in music, he teased, brushing past her. That afternoon, she set her phone on the floor beside the vent and hit record. She let it run while she unpacked the kitchen. And when she played it back later, her heart stopped. The audio was faint but unmistakable. A man's voice. She hears us. Things changed after that. The whispers grew bolder. She heard names, faint, fading words like wake her. The humming became a lullaby. It always started when she passed the hallway, and it always stopped when she turned to listen. Thomas remained unconvinced. He joked, he blamed the drafts, old wiring, even her imagination. But even he couldn't laugh it off with what happened next. At 3:17 a.m., they woke to the sound of metal hitting the floor. Every vent in the house, hallway, bedroom, kitchen, had come open. The covers lay beside them, screws neatly placed in tiny piles. They had not been ripped off, just removed. And the house was freezing. Thomas searched room to room with a baseball bat in hand, but there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no animals, just an eerie silence. They called a technician, and Carl was in his 60s and looked like he'd seen too many basements and not enough daylight. After 2 hours crawling through ducts and checking the furnace, he came back with a tight frown. Your central vent, he said. Massive. Shouldn't be in a place like this. He scratched his head. This layout, it's not standard. I've seen it once before. It was in a house that burned down back in the 1940s. And they reused the ducts. Some of them got built over. Built over? Ava repeated. Carl nodded. Yeah, instead of tearing the whole thing out, they just sealed it, buried it under new construction. He hesitated. You ever hear anything strange? Voices or shifting in the vents? Ava and Thomas said nothing. Carl did not stay for coffee. He could read the room. That night, Ava dreamed of being underground. She crawled through ducts that shrank the farther she went in. Her hands were raw. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. In the darkness ahead, he heard someone sobbing. Behind her, a voice, low and hollow.
You don't belong here.
She woke, choking on her own breath. They went to the records office at the Historical Society the next day. The current house they found was built in 1957. But before that, a 2-story Victorian owned by the Hollis family burned to the ground in 1949. The cause? A faulty furnace. 5 people inside, but only 2 bodies had been recovered. The other 3? Missing. They were never found. A neighbor's old statement had been preserved in the report, and Ava read it aloud in a whisper.
Even after the fire, we still heard them, crying through the floor grates, talking, begging. House was gone. Their voices stayed.
That evening, Ava didn't run. He didn't record. He sat cross-legged in the hallway and stared at the open vent. Who are you? She asked. First, there was nothing. Then a voice, a male voice, dry and broken like wind through dead leaves.
They covered us, buried us in the walls, and they forgot.
Ava's voice trembled as she asked what they wanted. This time the voice came out from every vent in the house.
Get out of our house.
That night, Thomas finally heard them too. They woke to footsteps in the halls, slow, deliberate, too heavy to be rodents, too rhythmic for pipes, and the air around them turned icy. Then, with a loud growl of sorts, the furnace roared to life, all by itself. And then as they clutched each other, underneath the covers, the air ducts groaned. A chorus of voices rose from within, moaning, wailing, crying out all at once. And then came the deafening silence. After a few terrifying moments, one final whisper from the hallway.
He understands now.
They moved out within a week, lost their deposit, broke their contract, but they didn't care. Now they live on the 3rd floor of a building with no vents, no noisy neighbors above, and they sleep with the fans on or music playing, anything to keep that horrific silence away. Some homes carry more than memories. Some carry echoes of the lives that lived within them, lives that may never have left. And if you're ever alone in the quiet and your house begins to whisper, listen. Sometimes they're waiting for you to respond. Don't touch that dial, because we will be back with more. Welcome, Darklings. You're about to meet a man who spent his life listening to voices across oceans, data through static, whispers carried on waves no one else could hear. Tonight, he'll tune into something he was never meant to find, something that doesn't just transmit, it chooses. And when the signal calls, you don't change the channel, it changes you. Because this isn't just a frequency, it's a warning wrapped in a whisper, looping back through time, waiting for someone to hear it. And Marcus Killian, he just made contact. And like the glow of the radio dial before you, you've made contact to your portal to the strange. Welcome back to the Paranormal 360. Marcus Killian had always trusted machines more than people. People were emotional, inconsistent, but frequencies didn't lie. They carried only what was sent, no more, no less. So when he accepted a post-retirement contract job monitoring anomalous atmospheric frequencies in a remote part of Nebraska, he welcomed the isolation. The observatory sat alone atop a low plateau, 3 miles from the nearest road, surrounded by fields that shifted in the wind like a breathing thing. Most nights, it was just Marcus, his equipment, and the sky. It was the perfect job, until the night something out there found him. It began on a Tuesday. The air was dry and brittle, and the wind had dropped to a rare dead calm. Marcus sat alone in the control room, a dim red lamp casting long shadows across the consoles. He was idly scanning high-frequency bands, half listening to the soft rustle of static, when the spectrum analyzer pulsed. Then, the voice came through.
Event projection 449 CST. Highway 6. Collision. 3 deceased.
Just a sterile male voice, followed by 3 tones. Then silence. He blinked at the readout. The frequency, 18.136 megahertz, wasn't registered for anything. Not commercial, not military, not even listed among rogue pirate bands. Something that shouldn't exist, but it did. He played the recording back twice. There was no origin trace, no bounce, as if the transmission had birthed itself directly inside the receiver. Marcus logged it, copied the file, and wrote it off as some elaborate prank. And then he went to bed. At 6 a.m., the news came in. There was a 3-car pileup on Highway 6. The time of the incident, 4:52 a.m. 3 people dead. He sat there, the report open on his laptop, heart ticking like a Geiger counter. The next night, he waited. No channel surfing, no logging, just him and the frequency. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the signal returned.
Substation overload. Grid 14. 1 casualty.
That morning, a lineman was electrocuted while performing repairs near a substation in Lancaster County. Marcus didn't believe in psychic phenomena. He believed in data. Precise, timed, patterned, logical data. So he began testing it. He rerouted the receiver through a Faraday cage, isolated it from the antenna, used a portable battery supply instead of building power. He even relocated the equipment to his trailer to eliminate any local interference. And yet, every night at 3:33 a.m., the signal found him. By the end of the week, he had 3 more recordings. Each transmission described an event: a drowning, a house fire, a mechanical failure on a grain elevator. All deadly, all confirmed. Each haunted him more than the one before. He contacted Ellis, a former colleague from his days at Fort Meade, now working with the FCC. Ellis, I've got a rogue frequency issuing death reports before they happen, Marcus said. There was a long pause on the line.
18.136?
Ellis asked finally. Yes.
Listen, I shouldn't be telling you this, but that frequency was part of an experimental Cold War program called Echo Mirror, Predictive Analytics, Signal AI. They shut that thing back down in 1989.
Why?
Because it didn't just predict disasters. Some people believed it caused them.
That night, the voice changed.
Operator MK detected. Observation commencing.
He recoiled from the screen. He pulled the plug, every cord, every cable, shut the whole system down, even his laptop. Still at 3:33 a.m., the laptop turned on by itself. No boot screen, just black, then a single blinking line of white text.
You've been marked.
The screen flashed once and then went dark. Marcus fled, driving 3 hours west to a backwards motel with no internet access, no cable, no cell reception. He paid in cash, kept the lights off. The room reeked of mildew and dust, but it was far from that lab. Damn it, that was good enough, or so he thought. At 3:33 a.m., the television flickered on, and words began scrolling across the screen.
Integration begins at dawn.
His breath caught in his throat as another line appeared.
You are the signal now.
He smashed the screen with a violent kick. The tube imploded in a shower of sparks, but he knew it didn't matter. The signal had already taken root. With his head hung in acceptance of his strange fate, he returned to the observatory. Back at the observatory, the speakers crackled to life, welcoming him back with an ominous message.
You are not the first operator, but you will be the last.
Tears streamed down his face as he wept in silent resignation. That night, the signal came early, 3:29 a.m. The shriek that erupted from the lab speakers split the air like a siren from another world. The sound distorted reality, bending the edges of the room. Marcus collapsed, blood trickling from his ears. The next morning, he awoke on the floor, eyes bloodshot, chest tight. His recorder still ran, though he had no memory of turning it on. The audio captured nothing but a constant low pulse and one phrase.
Integration failed.
Desperate, Marcus remembered the training compound outside Cheyenne, an old relay station, buried deep. He'd done signal testing there once, 20 years ago. It was dark, forgotten, and shielded. He drove through the night, barely stopping, fueled by gas station coffee and sheer panic. The bunker was intact, locked, but his old credentials worked. Inside, rusted consoles, broken monitors, but silence. He set up one receiver, no antenna, just a recorder and a single screen. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m., then 2:45. He sat in stillness for yet another hour. He opened his notebook to document this radio silence, and he froze. The last page was already filled out, not from his hand, but somehow it was his handwriting. Operator 360A present. Synchronization complete. Begin transmission. His fingers trembled and he dropped the pen. And from somewhere, deep in the circuitry of the discarded equipment, a voice spoke out.
Signal integrity confirmed.
He reached for the receiver. It was alive, broadcasting. Then Marcus realized he was no longer the listener. He had become the antenna. Marcus Killian was never seen again. Weeks later, when seismic anomalies registered near the compound, a federal survey team was dispatched. They found the entrance breached. Inside, no signs of struggle, no human remains. Only a single active transmitter, powered by a burned-out battery, feeding signal through a dead repeater, and the monitor pulsed with one phrase.
Operator Killian online. Sequence initiated.
There are signals that come from towers and some that come from memory. And once you're tuned in, you don't get to turn it off.
Have you ever felt like something or someone was trying to tell you something? That inner nudge, that quiet whisper from the universe, with intuition sharpened by years of spiritual connection and a deep-rooted gift. Winnie Schrader delivers readings that are compassionate, insightful, and shockingly accurate. Whether you're facing a crossroads healing from heartache, or just curious what the cards reveal, Winnie creates a safe, sacred space to explore your journey. This isn't fortune cookie fluff. This is honest, intuitive guidance from someone who's helped hundreds find clarity, closure, and confidence. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Book your session now at lovelotustarot.com and take control of your journey. That's lovelotustarot.com. Winnie's sessions are personal, powerful, and often life-changing. That's lovelotustarot.com.
Finally, let me introduce you to a woman who thought she knew every inch of her home. For 20 years, she walked the same halls, lived with the same creaks and groans of the old place, but in this house, the architecture seems to have plans of its own. And when the layout begins to shift, reality may follow. Tonight, she'll learn the space between walls holds more than insulation. It holds secrets, just like the Paranormal 360. Rachel Samuels had lived in the little house on Cypress Lane for 2 decades. It was the kind of neighborhood where time slowed down. Old trees arched over narrow streets, porches leaned just a bit too far forward, and everyone waved like they knew you even if they didn't. The blue bungalow wasn't perfect. Peeling paint, creaky floors, strange hums from the walls, but it was hers. And after the divorce, the silence felt like a victory, and the house had become her sanctuary. The floor plan was simple: 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen that looked directly into the living room. She'd cleaned every baseboard, painted every wall at least twice, and even replaced the hinges on the hallway closet herself, which is why on the 9th of April, the new door stopped her heart. She had turned off the TV and was walking to her bedroom when she saw it, nestled there between the bathroom and the guest room, narrow with chipped yellow paint and a knob that didn't match the others. It hadn't been there before, she was sure of it. Rachel stared at it so long, her legs began to shake. She stepped closer, fingertips grazing the cool brass knob. It wasn't dusty. No draft came from beneath it, and it fit the hallway trim perfectly, like it had always been part of the house. But she knew it hadn't, right? Was she having a stroke, she wondered? How could she not recognize this door in her home, in a space she had walked thousands of times? Slowly, she reached out a trembling hand, her mind racing, and she grabbed the knob and twisted. The knob creaked and the door moaned in rebellion as she opened it. Inside was a deep, narrow closet. Wood-paneled walls, no shelves, no bar for hangers, just an empty space and the faintest smell like flowers pressed between old book pages. She shut the door and backed away slowly. Rachel shuffled to her bedroom door in disbelief. She lay awake for hours as her mind tried to make sense of this impossible thing. When sleep finally did come for her, she dreamed of a hallway that curved back into itself, lined with doors that opened to nowhere. To her utter astonishment, the door was still there the next morning. She searched the hallway for signs of change, discoloration in the paint, scratches on the floor, anything that might explain it. But there was nothing. She texted her sister, "Hey, weird question. Do you remember a second closet in my hallway?" Her sister's texted reply brought no comfort. "No, why?" Rachel didn't answer. 2 days passed before she opened the door again. This time, there was something inside. A single child's shoe. Worn leather, white laces, scuffed toe, resting neatly in the center of the floor. She knelt down, heart pounding, and picked it up. The shoe was cold. It was damp. And inside, a faint initial was stitched in faded thread, the letter C. She didn't know any children. None had visited, and she certainly hadn't put it there. She placed the shoe outside the closet and closed the door. In the morning, the shoe was gone. She tried to ignore it, left the hall light on, even started sleeping on the couch where the door wouldn't be in her line of sight. But the dreams kept returning. This time, the doors in the hallway opened and closed on their own, creaking slowly one by one until only the closet remained. And from inside the darkness, she recoiled as she heard something breathe. By the end of the week, her nerves were frayed. The closet door creaking when she passed it, just ajar, like it was waiting, almost daring her to open it again. One evening, she wedged a chair beneath the knob. But the next morning, the door was wide open, and the chair lay splintered on the floor. Inside, she found something new. A Polaroid photograph. A blurry photo of a young girl standing in Rachel's hallway, barefoot, one sock sagging at the ankle. Her head was turned toward the closet. In the picture, the door was open, and something was peeking out from behind it. Rachel drove to the county records office that afternoon, demanding the house's history. Built in 1929, 5 owners, 2 deaths in the home, both natural causes. But the clerk hesitated. "There was a missing persons case," she said, tapping the screen. "A child in 1974. The case was never solved. The closet was the last place she had been seen playing." Rachel's mouth went dry. "What was her name?" The clerk squinted. Caroline Mays." Rachel didn't speak, just nodded, turned, and walked out. The shoe? The initial. It was just a single letter, C. That night, Rachel stood in front of the closet, flashlight in hand. She took a deep breath, then opened it wide. Her eyes widened. How was this possible? The closet was even deeper now, far deeper than before. She stepped inside, sweeping the beam of light along the walls. A flicker of movement. She spun, catching a glimpse of something pale and small darting out of view. A child's voice whispered behind her.
I was just playing.
The door slammed shut. She screamed, pounded against it. The flashlight flickered and then went out. Darkness swallowed her whole. When she came to, she was lying back in her own bed. Sunlight pouring through the window. Birds chirping outside. She sat up slowly, her head spinning. The closet door was gone. Just a blank wall now. Seamless. She ran her hands along the surface. No hinges, no frame, no handle. Just paint. Had this all been a dream, a nightmare? She opened every other closet in the house. All normal, all accounted for. Even the guest room was just a guest room again. That afternoon, she burned the photo and the shoe, buried the ashes in the backyard, and weeks passed, and the horrific dreams stopped until one night, while brushing her teeth, she heard a soft creak come from down the hall, a door slowly easing open, and the faintest whisper.
Want to play again?
Some houses hide secrets in the walls and dare you to uncover them. As the last story fades and the lights flicker back on, you might be asking yourself, did I lock all the doors? Have I secured the windows? What just made that sound from the basement? In hour 2, the world twists even further. A roadside diner becomes an uncomfortable trap. A child's toy speaks. And a final phone call comes from a place no line should reach. Catch your breath, cuddle up close, because when the curtain rises again on your theater of the mind, anything can happen, and just might, when the Paranormal 360 returns. Once upon a darker time, before screens flickered and phones followed us into bed, people huddled close to the glow of their family radios. The house would go still, the lights low, and then the voices would come, inviting them into other worlds, stranger realms, and places best left unexplored. Tonight, we bring that spirit back. Hour 2 of the Paranormal 360 begins now, and if you've stayed with us this long, we invite you to continue listening. But be warned, this road ahead has no mile markers, no exits, and some who travel it never come back. But fear not, faithful followers. I'm here with you, and it is my sworn duty to return us all to safety. Well, as many of you as I can. Shall we begin? It's time to once again turn the lights down, wrap yourself in your favorite blanket, hold on to someone's hand, and prepare yourself for what comes next on the Paranormal 360 with me, your host on the road of high strangeness. I'm Dave Schrader, and we've only just begun. Sometimes the roads we know, like the back of our hand, can change without explanation, and sometimes they lead us somewhere we never meant to go. When routine meets the unexpected, when comfort takes a wrong turn into the unfamiliar, that's when the true journey begins. Tonight, a familiar drive becomes a passage into something completely off the map. Laura and Nate aren't on your typical road trip. They're heading straight into the realm of the Paranormal 360. Laura and Nate had driven the stretch between Elm Creek and their cabin in Birch Hollow every fall for the past 10 years. It was a tradition. The same bags of candy corn in the glove box, the same thermos of coffee between them, the same mixed CD of scratchy jazz and Halloween oldies humming low beneath their laughter. The road was muscle memory, mile markers, old gas stations, the crooked sign for Duffy's Orchard. This year, the leaves came early, and the sky hung low with the promise of rain. Somewhere past mile marker 31, Nate frowned. Wasn't there a gas station here? Laura glanced up from her book. They used to be a Shell, yeah, it closed down. No, he said, easing off the gas. It's just gone. There wasn't even a foundation left. Just woods. Trees so thick and dark, they seemed to absorb the afternoon light. That doesn't make sense, Laura murmured. You sure we didn't miss something? Nate checked the mirror. The road behind them looked the same as always, but the GPS signal had cut out 20 minutes earlier, and their phones showed no bars. Then, the detour sign appeared. Temporary, bright orange, hand-painted lettering. Alt route, Perch Hollow. Without thinking, Nate turned right onto the narrow lane. Laura glanced over. You sure that's a good idea? It's marked. It connects back up. Probably just a shortcut. The road ahead twisted sharply, hugging the forest. It wasn't paved, but gravel and old tar cracked like a dry riverbed. The deeper they drove, the more the light seemed to dim, as though the sun had decided to keep its distance. The trees pressed closer, limbs arching over the road like a canopy. 15 minutes passed, then 30. No signs, no houses, no bird song from the trees above. And the growing sense that they were being watched. I don't like this, Laura said finally. This road's not on the map. Nate slowed the car, squinting into the mist. Do you hear that? Laura rolled down her window and a faint sound drifted in. Hollow, metallic. A bell? Far off, ringing once, then again, then silence. They waited. Nothing. Turn around, she whispered. Nate nodded. He cranked the wheel and reversed, only to stop short. The road behind them had vanished. In its place was thick, dense forest. Ancient. No gravel, no path, just a wall of trees. They drove down slowly, headlights barely cutting through the mist. The road narrowed with every mile, hemmed in by trees on either side. The silence was oppressive. Even the sound of the engine seemed swallowed by the night air. Then, a light ahead. A diner. Old-fashioned, silver-paneled, glowing faintly under a flickering neon sign. Gable's Grill. They pulled in. The parking lot was cracked concrete and empty. The front door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was warm and it smelled like fried onions and coffee. A woman in a pale pink uniform stood behind the counter. Her name tag read June. She smiled. Evening, you're just in time. For what? Laura asked. June didn't answer. She pointed to a booth near the back. 2 cups of coffee were already poured, steam rising from them in thin gray curls. Nate hesitated, but Laura sat. And they drank. A man shuffled out of the kitchen, older, thin. He wore a gray apron and a blank expression. He placed a slice of cherry pie in front of Nate, a bowl of tomato soup in front of Laura. Same as always, he muttered. We've never been here, Laura said. June smiled. That's what you always say. Nate pushed his pie away. We're just trying to get to Perch Hollow. Can you give us directions? June's smile faded. You should eat, honey. The bell rang above the door. A couple entered, mid-40s, pale, wide-eyed. They looked soaked to the bone, though it hadn't rained. They paused when they saw Laura and Nate. You're new, the woman said. Laura started to respond but froze. The couple sat in the booth behind them and began to eat, silently, methodically, never breaking eye contact. Nate stood up. We're leaving. June didn't stop them. They walked back to the car, only now it wasn't their car. It was the same make and model, sure, same color, but the bumper sticker Laura had placed last spring was gone. So were the scratches from the mailbox incident. And the inside smelled musty. And the keys in Nate's pocket, they didn't fit the ignition. They quickly ran back inside. The diner was empty. Lights off, no June, no couple, no sound, only the faint smell of cherry pie. They ran through the trees, through the fog, branches slicing their arms, roots catching their feet. Time slipped. How long had they run? They couldn't say. Eventually, they collapsed on a stretch of cracked pavement. The road again. But not their road. A sign lay face down in the weeds. Nate flipped it over. Birch Hollow, established 1862. Below that, a hand-painted scrawl. No return. They followed the road on foot. Eventually, they reached a small town, familiar yet wrong. Shops they didn't recognize, street names that didn't match. No people, just a breeze and 1,000 falling leaves. In the window of a faded antique shop, Laura spotted a framed newspaper. She stepped closer. Missing couple vanishes on Old Post Road, October 12, 1981. The grainy photo showed two faces. Hers and Nate's. Some roads take you places. Others can just take you. This part of your journey is over, but we will be back with more Paranormal 360. Faith can bring comfort. Faith brings community. But what happens when belief brushes up against something unseen? Some souls find peace in the house of God, while some just get lost. Our next tale is a lesson in devotion, mystery, and the silent shadows that sometimes sit among us, as they may be sitting next to you now, huddled in the darkness of the Paranormal 360. When Margaret Hensley first moved to the village of Coldwater Cove, she was drawn to its quiet. Nestled against the Atlantic, its streets were cobbled, its storefronts modest, and its residents the sort who offered warm greetings without prying questions, just what she needed. Her husband had died the winter before, suddenly and without reason. One moment he was making tea, the next he was gone. The doctors called it cardiac anomaly. Margaret just called it cruel. She found a small cottage on Windermere Lane, its roof weathered and windows bowed. It overlooked the ocean, where gulls circled and the tide whispered secrets to the rocks. She spent her mornings in silence and her nights reading by lamplight. But on Sundays, she made a point to walk the curved road to St. Luke's Chapel. It was an old stone church, crouched in a grove of pine and fog. Its bell tower leaned slightly as though listening. Margaret liked the quiet and the wooden pews, the hymns, the breath of incense that never left the walls. And it was there she first noticed him, the man in the fourth pew. He was always there before her. He was always alone. He wore a dark wool coat, even in the warmer months, and a brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. His hands rested gently on his lap, and he never moved. Not during hymns, not during sermons. He sat with the patience of a saint. At first, Margaret thought nothing of it. Perhaps he was just shy. Perhaps he was hard of hearing. But several weeks passed, and she realized something odd. No one ever spoke to him. Not the pastor, not the ushers, not the parishioners. It was as if he wasn't there. One Sunday, she made a point to smile as she passed his pew. He did not return it. But as she turned away, she felt it. A chill, not air, but awareness. He was watching her. "Who's the gentleman that sits near the front?" Margaret asked Pastor Whitecrom. The old pastor looked confused. "Which gentleman?" "Fourth pew, always there, tall coat and hat." Whitcomb frowned. "Miss Hensley, the fourth pew's been empty for years. It's where the Nichols family used to sit before the fire." Margaret blinked. "What fire?" Whitcomb shifted, uneasy. "Years ago, a tragedy. House fire on Candle Street. The father, Harold Nichols, perished trying to save his daughter. Some say he still finds his way to Sunday service." He chuckled weakly, as if to dismiss the very thing he'd just said. Margaret didn't laugh. That night, sleep evaded her. Dreams came hot and fast, filled with the scent of smoke and the sound of bells. A church bell, but warped, slow, as though ringing underwater. She replayed every Sunday in her mind, the posture, the silence, the way no one ever walked too close to that pew. She dreamt of smoke curling through stained glass, of a man's silhouette rising from the flames untouched. The next morning, she returned to the chapel. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. Dust danced in the sunbeams, and the fourth pew stood quietly beneath the arched window. She stepped closer. A faint impression marked the cushion, worn, sunken, as if someone had just stood up. She reached out and touched the backrest. It was freezing cold. The air around her shifted. No wind, no breeze, just a pressure, like someone standing too close. The hair on her arms rose. The scent of smoke, faint but unmistakable, lingered for a moment and then vanished. Margaret backed out quickly. The sightings became even stranger. Margaret began seeing him before the church, reflected in shop windows of Mill Street, walking along the dunes just as dusk fell, always distant, always silent. Once, she caught sight of him beneath the broken gas lamp near her home. She rushed to the window, but by the time she got there, he had mysteriously vanished. Yet the next morning, footprints appeared in the dew of her garden path, heavy, booted footprints that led nowhere. She found herself speaking aloud in the evenings, not to herself exactly, just outward, a habit she'd never had before. And when she did, she sometimes heard a creak or a faint knock, the groan of old wooden floorboards. And one night, as she sat by the fire with her knitting untouched in her lap, she heard a voice, not loud, not clear, but close, a voice right up against her ear. "Thank you." Unable to let it go, Margaret visited the town archives. Old news clippings told the story. Harold Nichols, church elder, beloved neighbor, died in 1967 while trying to rescue his young daughter from a fire caused by faulty wiring. But one detail chilled her more than the rest. The article listed his last known address, Windermere Lane, her house. That Sunday, she returned to St. Luke's, her heart pounding. He was there as always, in the fourth pew. But this time as she passed, she paused. She sat down beside him. The pew creaked beneath her weight. The air was cold enough to make her breath mist in front of her mouth. She turned, and for the first time, she saw his face. Pale, eyes like ash, lips slightly parted, as if about to whisper. He looked at her, not through her, not past her, but into her, and he wept. One tear, cold as ice, sliding down his cheek and vanishing before it reached his collar. She did not scream. She reached for his hand, and it felt like riverstone left in the shade. She held it, and he closed his eyes. A sound rose up around them, not from the choir, not from any living throat. A hymn, distant, like voices echoing through the bones of the church. Margaret did not understand the language, but the sorrow in it moved her to tears. She never spoke of it, not to the pastor, not to anyone. But from that day on, she returned every Sunday. She sat beside him. Sometimes they prayed together. Sometimes she simply kept him company, or would hold his hand. And though no one ever mentioned it, the fourth pew stopped being empty. Even in death, Harold Nichols was never late for service. And in that house of worship, where the veil is thin and the echoes long, two souls found a way to grieve together. In life, the living often seek peace in quiet corners. Sometimes the dead do as well. We hope you're enjoying this little corner of nostalgia, a place where you can be sure you're never alone. This is the Paranormal 360.
Now, during the Halloween season, the veil between the worlds gets thinner and the chills get real. Oh, so very real. Something is waiting in the dark, and it's calling your name. So answer the call this Halloween season for the Paranormal 60 Presents Halloween Haunts and Hijinks, October 9th through the 12th, for a supernatural weekend you'll never forget. It's being held at the historic haunted Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. Join Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files, Ghosts of Devil's Perch, and the host of the Paranormal 60 podcast. He's teaming up with Dalen Spratt from Ghost Brothers and Phantom Forensics. And we have heart-centered, intuitive Diet Renee for a weekend packed with spine-tingling experiences. You'll have 2 nights of live investigations and paranormal experiments, interactive workshops, gallery readings, and meet and greets, live presentations with experts themselves. This isn't just an event, it's a doorway to the unknown. So you have to ask yourself, do you dare cross it? Now, tickets are limited, so please book your Halloween Haunts and Hijinks adventure now at darknessevents.com. Again, that is darknessevents.com.
In a world stitched together by memory and nostalgia, the toys of our youth stand as sentinels, silent, smiling, and still. But what if one remembered more than it should? What if the past wasn't done playing? Tonight, a woman returns to her childhood home, only to discover that some games never truly end. They say you can never go home again, but tonight's tale might prove otherwise. Here in the Paranormal 360. It had been nearly 20 years since Hannah Morrison set foot in her mother's house. The old colonial sat crooked at the end of a shaded cul-de-sac in northern Connecticut, half swallowed by ivy and memory. When her mother passed, Hannah inherited it, but the weight of childhood trauma, of things long buried in the corners of her mind, kept her from coming back. Until now. She'd only intended to clean the place up, sort the paperwork, and list the house. One weekend in and out. That's what she promised herself. The moment she stepped through that door, Hannah felt as though she was 10 years old again. Same creaky floorboards, same ticking grandfather clock in the hallway, same faint scent of lilacs and lemon polish. She paused, hand still on the doorknob, and she listened. The house was quiet, but not the comforting quiet. More the calm before the storm. Her mother had always kept a small radio humming in the kitchen, a kind of charm against loneliness. But now, the air was too still, heavy, as if something had been waiting. Hannah shook it off. It's just a house, she whispered, but the walls didn't seem to agree. She worked room by room, boxing dishes and folding curtains, until the sun dipped behind the trees. The attic was all that remained, and Hannah Morrison had always hated that attic. As a girl, she refused to go up there. Her mother used it for storage, holiday decorations, old books, clothes, but Hannah remembered it all too well for one thing. One terrifying thing. That damn doll. She'd been given it on her 5th birthday, a porcelain-faced beauty in a green velvet dress with real eyelashes and ringlets of auburn hair. Her name, according to the stitched label on her sleeve, was Mirabelle. Hannah loved her instantly. That is, until she didn't. It started with whispers at night, as most things do, just as she was drifting off. Hannah would wake to find Mirabelle no longer on the shelf, but on the floor, sometimes standing in the hallway, once staring at her with her little porcelain hand pressed to Hannah's lips as though trying to stifle her from screaming. She told her mother, of course, but her mother had only smiled. "Imagination is a gift," she said, as she placed Mirabelle back on the shelf. The final straw? came when Hannah awoke one morning to find the doll in her bed, tucked under the blanket beside her. Her tiny porcelain mouth had been twisted, and her face, Hannah would swear, was smirking. She screamed. She had had enough, and so had her mother. Mirabelle was packed away that afternoon and banished to the attic. And now, 2 decades later, Hannah found herself climbing the stairs to face that fear, to see that doll, with luck, for the final time. The attic door groaned like an old man rising from bed. Dust filtered through a single cracked window, and boxes lined the walls like silent soldiers standing at attention. The air was stale. Hannah took a short, deep breath as she pulled the chain for the bare light bulb, and it crackled to life, casting long shadows against the wall and floors. It didn't take her long to find the box, that damned box, and it was still labeled in her mother's handwriting. Hannah, toys. Slowly she peeled back the flaps of the box, and at the bottom, wrapped in yellow newspaper, was Mirabelle. Hannah's stomach immediately turned, a revolting sense of dread washing over her. She almost didn't touch it. But something in her, something small and so stubborn, refused to back down. With trembling hands, she unwrapped the doll. Mirabelle's face was unchanged. White porcelain, pink cheeks, those same ringlets. But her left eye had cracked, creating a jagged line down her cheek. Hannah sat back on her heels. "You're just a doll," she whispered. But as the words left her lips, the light bulb began to flicker. Just once at first, but that was enough. She rewrapped Mirabelle, shoved her in the box, and taped it shut. "Garage sale for you," she muttered. "You can be someone else's problem now, Mirahell." Hannah steadied herself as she turned to leave, but that's when something shuffled behind her. A slow, dragging, scraping noise followed. She spun around. Nothing appeared to have moved, but the light flickered again, and this time, it blinked out. Darkness swallowed the attic as Hannah's breath caught in her throat. Then she heard it. A sound, soft but deliberate. Click, 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 like ceramic tapping on wood. "Hello?" she called, her voice cracking. Something small giggled. It was a child's giggle, but hollow, almost mechanical. Hannah's heart pounded. She groped for the pull chain. She found it and yanked, and then light flooded the room. The box, the sealed box, was now open, and Mirabelle stood there, defiantly on the floor, upright, facing Hannah. Hannah backed away, step by step, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Enough," she snapped. I don't want what's going on here. I'm done." She picked up the doll. It was harder than she remembered, heavier, and carried her downstairs, past the kitchen, through the back door, and into the trash bin, slamming the lid and fastening it. She locked every door, turned on every light, and then poured herself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat in the kitchen, hands trembling. The clock ticked. Tick, tick, tick. And then she heard it. Boom, boom, boom. 3 thundering knocks. She froze. It was coming from the back door. 3 more slow, deliberate knocks. Boom, boom, boom. She rose, her heart racing, and peeked out the window. Nothing was there. She turned, stepped back, and let out a blood-curdling scream. Mirabelle was sitting on the kitchen table, one eye cracked, dress pristine, hands folded in her lap. Hannah fell backward, knocking over the chair. The doll's head slowly turned towards her. Another giggle, this one closer, and it resounded inside her head. "I missed you," it whispered. Claire grabbed that devil doll by the fragile leg and swung her hard against the counter. Mirabelle shattered into pieces. Porcelain fragments scattered across the linoleum. Breathing hard, Claire stood over the mess. "Well, I didn't miss you, you bitch," she sneered. The next morning, Hannah left the house for good. She locked the front door, sold the property to a couple from New Jersey, and never returned. But sometimes on long nights in the dark comfort of her bed, Hannah can hear it. Click, 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 and then a soft giggle. A voice from a box sealed long ago. "Let's play." Some toys gather dust, some gather memories, and some gather something darker. And here we know something about the dark. We are, after all, your home for all things that go bump in the night. We are the Paranormal 360. America is dotted with beacons of comfort, glowing diners at lonely crossroads where the coffee is hot, the jukebox never skips, and strangers share smiles over scrambled eggs and stories. But what if one of those places wasn't meant for nourishment, but for bait? Tonight, a traveler pulls off the highway and into something that hungers. Tonight, we feed that darkness here on the Paranormal 360. It was 2:17 a.m. when Jake Pullum spotted the sign. Pink and teal neon bleeding through the thick fog, perched above a chrome diner that looked as though it had stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting. The Neon Angel Diner. Its letters blinked slowly like a heartbeat on life support. He hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. His phone was dead. The road, slick from an earlier storm, had become a featureless blur. The endless hum of tires and the static-choked radio had lulled his senses into a half-doze. The diner appeared like a hallucination, almost too perfect. Jake pulled into the lot beneath a crooked lamppost as the light above him buzzed, moths thumping softly against its glass. He stepped out and immediately noticed the silence. No wind, no insects. Even the trees stood still like paper cutouts. Inside, a bell above the door jingled sweetly. Warm air wrapped around him like a blanket. The place was immaculate. Polished floors, gleaming chrome, walls lined with polished booths in Robin's Blue Egg, and the jukebox in the corner played a snappy Patsy Cline tune. And standing behind the counter was her. She couldn't have been more than 22. Platinum curls pinned just so. Her uniform crisp and clean. The white apron as pristine as a wedding veil. Her name tag read, Darlene. "Welcome to the Neon Angel," she said, voice lilting, eyes like twin saucers. "Just you tonight?" Jake nodded, unsure why the words wouldn't come. He slid into a booth by the window. "Coffee?" she asked. He nodded again, steam rising in delicate coils, and he took a sip. It was perfect. He scanned the room. Not a soul. No cooks behind the pass, no grease stains, no fingerprints. It was as though time had paused just for him. "What brings you through this late?" Darlene asked, sliding the menu towards him. Jake cleared his throat. "Just passing through, Denver bound." Her smile didn't fade. "You still got a ways." He ordered eggs, toast, bacon. She nodded and vanished into the kitchen. The food arrived, hot, perfect, not a single blemish. No toast too brown, no yolk off center. He ate in silence, though every bite filled him with a creeping unease. It was like biting into nostalgia. As he chewed, a flicker of movement caught his eye in the window. A shadow, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Do you get a lot of traffic this late?" he asked, forcing casualness into his voice. Darlene poured more coffee, her eyes distant. "Only the lost ones." He looked up. "What?" She blinked. "Just travelers, you know." Suddenly, the sound of a dog barking outside the window drew his attention. Jake looked out the window, and although he could hear the dog, he could not see it. Needing a break from the booth's unnatural warmth, he said, "Where's your restroom?" "Back left," she said, "past the payphone." The hallway was longer than it should have been. Too narrow, too dark. A single bulb buzzed overhead at the end, and a door stood ajar. He passed the restroom, drawn inexplicably to the other room. The sign said, "Employees only." Inside was not a kitchen. Rows of glass tubes lined the walls, glowing faintly blue. Suspended inside were figures, people, their eyes wide, mouths frozen mid-scream, bodies encased in still fluid. Some look ancient, others much more recent. A low hum filled the room, mechanical and steady. Cold began to bite into his skin, and then something moved. From the ceiling, a shape descended, fluid, shifting, female but not. Her limbs were too long, her body glistening and translucent, as if made of light and oil. Her head tilted, no eyes, just a featureless shimmer.
"You're early,"
she whispered. Jake turned to run. The hallway warped as he sprinted. The bulb burst overhead, shadows stretched like fingers. He reached the diner, but it was different. The booths had turned, the windows gone. The jukebox played louder, more distorted, like a nightmare. Darlene stood behind the counter.
"You didn't finish your eggs,"
she said. Her voice was deeper now, echoing. He grabbed a stool, hurled it at the wall. It hit. The wall rippled like water. Jake screamed. The door was gone.
"No exit,"
Darlene whispered.
"No waste."
He turned. The hallway returned, the employee's only door wide open. The tubes were still there. One was empty, waiting. Jake fell to his knees. "Please, please, no." The lights pulsed. The air thickened. And then, flash! Jake woke in his car. Hands clenched on the wheel, engine humming. The diner? The diner was gone. Only a dark stretch of road and trees whispering in the wind. He drove until the sun rose. Weeks later, he searched the name, the Neon Angel. One article appeared from 1956. Fire, total loss, no survivors. Locals said it just showed up just before dawn off the old highway, always clean, always open, and always hungry for more patrons. Some places remember, others refuse to be forgotten. Thank you for spending this evening with me, revisiting a time when imagination reigned supreme, when families gathered around the radio, letting their minds wander the darkness with monsters, mysteries, and strange voices whispering through the veil. Back then, the frights came safely wrapped in static and story, and when it got too intense, you could always turn off the radio, step back into the light, and remind yourself it wasn't real. Tonight's tales may have chilled your bones, twisted your mind, or stirred up memories of your own that may be best left buried. But don't worry, because once the dial clicks off, once the lights come back on, you're safe. After all, they were just stories, weren't they? But if something followed you back through the radio waves, if the shadows in your home seem a little more unsettling, and if your house doesn't feel quite as empty, well, that's probably just your imagination. Good night, my darklings. This has been the Paranormal 360.